Hello and welcome to this Safe Sanctuaries training intended especially for youth. We realize that the training that we currently offer is pretty intense. It has a lot of information that probably would not be as necessary for our youth volunteers to have. And it's a little bit long, so we figured that a shorter version of the training that's covering the essential parts of what you need to know about Safe Sanctuaries would be more helpful. So that's what we'll do today. First off, we want to thank you for your willingness to volunteer and to go through this training and to be involved with ministry to children, whether that be Vacation Bible School or WOW ministry or Sunday School ministry or part of our special event programming. We're grateful, and we couldn't do what we do without so many committed youth volunteers, so we're deeply appreciative. So Safe Sanctuaries, and that's a term that I'm sure you've heard many times. So what does it mean? Safe Sanctuaries is a series of guidelines, policies, and procedures initiated and implemented in order to create and maintain a safe environment for children, youth, and the volunteers who work with them. So it's our policy, our written down piece of paper that talks about reducing the risk of something inappropriate or abusive occurring within our church ministries. And also it gives volunteers and leaders tools to know how to help any child or youth who may have been abused either here or elsewhere, and to be able to report that appropriately. So those are kind of the two main focuses, the things that we do to keep kids safe here and safe in terms of just making sure that every child has everything that they need to be successful in our ministries. But also safe in terms of, if there's things that they're facing at home that are difficult and we're able to find out about them, that we know what to do to help them through those difficulties. So looking right at the policy, and so you hopefully have one of these as well, kind of thinking about the procedures that we have set up in order to, we call it reduce the risk. And so we screen and train volunteers. We say that you have to be 5 years older than the group of young people that you're working with. So if you're a younger youth volunteer, probably you to count as an official, one of our two leaders, you would have been through this training and you'd be 5 years older than those kids. You can go through this training and not and be able to be helpful with children who maybe are just a few years younger than you, but you don't count toward the ratio. So training is an important part of that. Making sure that you've been around for 6 months, that we get to connect with you, is an essential part of that. If you're doing any childcare just by yourself, for some of our upper middle school and high school, it might be babysitting for like a church Bible study or something like that. We require that you have a background check as part of that. And we ask that you are trained every 3 years. So this training that you'll be taking today is good for 3 years. But in 3 years, you'll be alerted to the fact that you need to go through it again. And it'll be different, covering different topics, but to keep us all current on what it means to be a Safe Sanctuaries congregation, and that we can be diligent in doing that. So a couple really big rules that we have, and really two rules, if you know, you'll be set for Safe Sanctuaries. And the first is the two-person rule. So that means that never do you want to find yourself in a situation where you are the sole leader working with a group of kids. You always want to have a partner. And of course, if a child gets hurt, if something like that, that you're dealing with a difficult, dangerous situation, you need to have someone else there with you to be able to help manage that. And so we always want there to be two. We never want to leave any volunteers on their own with kids.
So you might find yourself as a volunteer in a situation where the two-person requirement is not met, and that can happen a number of different ways. If you're a Sunday school teacher or a program leader, you might have a partner that you're expecting to be there, but for whatever reason, they've either let you know or maybe just haven't shown up, that for some reason they're not going to be able to be there on time or at all. And you're faced with the situation of, what do I do? So we've come up with the 3 C's, as a simple way to remember, what to do when you face a situation where you might be the only adult present. So certainly the first is to, call for someone else to help you meet the requirement. And that might be the first child or youth to be dropped off to the event. If they're accompanied by a parent, which we hope that they would be, to ask that parent if they're a safe sanctuary trained individual, if they would stay. Even if they're not, if they would stay, just to give you some time to get someone who is, to be present, to make sure that our 2-person requirement is covered. That may involve, poking your head out in the hallway, or, connecting with the first adult that is certified to come and join you, even for just temporary situation, until your partner or until some other person can, be brought in to help meet the 2-person requirement. Occasionally we've found that it's very helpful to know that you might be able to combine with another group. And sometimes this isn't an ideal situation, especially from an education standpoint, but certainly from our Safe Sanctuaries perspective, if our 2-year-old class needs to merge with our 3-year-old class, or even an elementary class, or whatever the situation may be, that combining groups, if there's one adult with one group and maybe 2 or even 1 with another, it covers you to give you the adults that you need, to make sure that we've met this requirement. And as a final, if you can't find someone else to help, if you can't, there's no other group to combine with, the third option is to cancel the event, to get kids back with families, as quickly and, in the best way as possible. And certainly we can't, have an event, without the 2-person requirement met. I mean, the 3 C's are really for emergency situations, because certainly in our planning, we know this rule. This is always on the forefront of our mind. We're always scheduling 2 people, and staffing things in such a way that this is covered. But we know that things happen, and people sometimes maybe forget, or are late, or caught up, and unable to attend. And so this is our way of handling that.
So there's always another person, and so this gets a little trickier. Like if you're doing a bathroom break, finding a way that 2 people are taking a group of children to the bathroom, so that there's 2, so it's not just one person doing that. And so that's a key situation, even to maintain 2 all the time, even when you split, even when you do that. And that second person can be any other person who has been through training, not just any other person, but someone who is a certified volunteer with youth or children's ministry. So 2 people, that's a big part. And the other, so there's 2 big things to remember. Open classrooms. And so everything we do is out in the open. We have windows in all of our doors. I mean, this, as youth, you are both ministering to others and learning kind of about these things in terms of your volunteer role, but you're also probably thinking in terms of your role as a youth and the leaders who work with you. That all your classrooms have windows or are with other people, and you always have 2 leaders, and these are things that we're very intentional about. So open classrooms, open physically, people can see in. Nothing is done in secret. We don't do anything that is in secret, and also figuratively open. So if a parent were to say that they wanted to sit in on our WOW ministry, that we would say certainly you're welcome to do so, and so that no one is kept out who wants to know kind of what's going on with the ministries that we have. So it applies to every church ministry that we have for youth or children. It even applies to other groups who run our church, or youth groups that come and spend the night here. They sign this and adhere to it as well. There's a group of people, the Child Protection Committee. They help make up, help to make changes to this policy, or to help uphold it. So certainly if there are concerns or ideas or feedback that you have about this training or about things related to safe sanctuaries, any person on that committee is a good person to talk to. And so included in that committee, and so I'll kind of give you an idea of who's on that, all of our pastors, all of our full-time programmatic staff, so that's like the children's ministry director, the youth ministry director, the weekday school director, the music director. So all those people are part of that committee, and then also 2 leaders that are with our worship and education council, worship and discipleship council. So the moderator and vice moderator of those. So, it makes the most sense if you have a concern, if you're a youth, they probably talk to me. If it's related to children, talk to Joe. If it's related to music, talk to the youth director. If it's something related to, your role as a youth. So we also want to talk about reporting. And so before we do that, I kind of, it's a little bit vague, and sometimes we don't speak clearly about what we mean by safe sanctuaries. And so I have a video to show that's just kind of helpful in terms of thinking this is what we want kids to know and be able to kind of abide by, and know that this is, something that will help them stay safe. And so we want you to view it, not only for your own benefit, but for the benefit of what we want to establish for kids. And then we want to talk about when that breaks down, what you do. If there is someone who's being mistreated in some way and you become aware of it, how we handle that. So we'll take a look at the video, and then we'll talk a little bit more in just a minute. Thank you.
My body safety rules. 1. My body is my body and it belongs to me. I can say no if I don't want to kiss or hug someone. I can give them a high five, shake their hand, or blow them a kiss. I am the boss of my body and what I say goes. 2. I have a safety network. Every person's safety network will be different. These are the adults I trust. I can tell these people anything and they will believe me. If I feel worried, scared, or unsure, I can tell someone on my safety network how I am feeling and why I feel this way. 3. Early warning signs. If I feel frightened or unsafe, I may sweat a lot, get a sick tummy, become shaky, and my heart might beat really fast. These feelings are called my early warning signs. If I feel this way about anything, I must tell an adult on my safety network straight away. 4. Private parts. My private parts are the parts of my body under my bathing suit. I always call my private parts by their correct names. No one can touch my private parts. No one can ask me to touch their private parts. And no one should show me pictures of private parts. If any of these things happen, I must tell a trusted adult on my safety network straight away. 5. Secrets. I should never keep secrets that make me feel bad or uncomfortable. If someone asks me to keep a secret that makes me feel bad or unsafe, I must tell an adult on my safety network straight away. My body is my body and it belongs to me.
So first I'll say that video was not our video created by our church, but created by Educate to Empower Publishing, and I'll put the footnote to get to that video directly in the comment section of the website. So I guess a first question for you to think about, and so obviously this is not exactly a conversation, but wanting you to stop and think and have your own answer for this. Who do you consider part of your safety network? So think about that for a second and name three to five people that you would consider part of your safety network. So I hope that that was an easy task, that you have trusted adults in your network. I think peers and it doesn't have to necessarily be an adult in our trusted network of people that we can share with. But certainly adults might be more helpful, especially if you're facing an abusive situation where you can talk about that with someone who can help you. Another question, why do you think kids need a safety network? What does that help accomplish for them? Think about that for a moment. So I would say kids need a safety network. Every person needs a safety network, because all of us have times when we need help, when there's a thing that we're facing that's bigger than what we can do. And so certainly as a church, God is our greatest part of our safety network, and God puts people in our lives, trusted other adults or peers, to help us through difficulty. And so it's important, especially for kids who in many ways are powerless, to have people who can help them when especially if they're being abused. So to define abuse, and that's so what is safe sanctuaries? It's preventing abuse is really another way to frame that. So child abuse refers to any act committed by a parent, caregiver, or person in a position of trust, which is not accidental, and which harms or threatens to harm a child's physical or mental health or welfare. So that can be different forms. That can be physical abuse, where they're maybe being beaten. Maybe that's a way that their parents discipline that's just not okay. And causing great physical harm. That's physical abuse. And so we as caring people and hopefully as church people who are part of children's safety network, that we're able to be there for them and help them get out of that abusive situation. So it can be physical, it can be emotional. Kids that are just treated in terrible ways, maybe by family members or other people who provide care for them. And as we hear them share about different things that we might say, whoa, that does not sound normal. If they talk about something that's occurred, or the way that maybe they're treated, that we can say something and that we can help them through that. We're going to talk about how to do that in just a minute. Or also sexual abuse, and that video was more about the sexual abuse aspect. Certainly every person that's been through public school has talked about good touch and bad touch, and I think kids have a familiarity with that. But what happens when they are treated in a way that is abusive sexually, and maybe they tell a person here at this church, maybe it happens here at this church. Certainly we don't foresee that happening, but we want to be prepared in all thinking about this topic. So what do they do? And so maybe they tell you, or maybe you observe the marks on their back or on their arms, or that show a sign of physical abuse. What do you do? So you can call Child Protective Services yourself and report it that way. That would be probably a little bit intimidating, especially for our youth volunteers. It's intimidating for adult volunteers. So at our church we have a system, that Child Protection Committee I mentioned. I'm a part of that. Music director, weekday school director, our pastors, our youth director are all people a part of that committee. So to be able to report to them, so that then they can take your report and kind of help take that to the next level to get that information to the proper people. And so it's always better to share rather than not share. If anything seems amiss, to let someone know. And if it seems like no one is taking that seriously, and you perceive that, you guys are smart enough to know, who's kind of like, yeah, that's probably fine. Maybe tell a few other people, like trusted adults within the church are part of that committee. Make sure that you're heard, because as we value your read on different things, if it seems like you're observing a potentially abusive situation in the life of a child that you're working with, that you would make sure it's known. And then they'll the members of that committee work together with Child Protection Services, with law enforcement, to take the next steps or determine if next steps are indeed necessary. So letting someone know, and maybe even if it's a little bit intimidating to go to someone on the Child Protection Committee, maybe you share that with your partner that you're working with, maybe in that program, and go together. As you share what you've heard with that person, or maybe you share it with your mom or dad, and then go with them and have their help in going to share that with someone, who's a leader here at the church, who can help move that forward. But speaking up, and making sure that you're always reporting anything that you notice, even if it seems maybe kind of small, it's probably nothing. We'd rather hear it than not hear it. So that's really important. So we certainly want, this training not to end here. As you have questions or have things that come up or specific things related to whatever programming you might be volunteering with, to ask questions and to say, what happens if, and to describe some of the situations you found yourself in and don't feel like you know quite the best way to handle those situations. So ask questions. We hope this was helpful. You are trained your training is good for 3 years, so you will be able to do this again, and as kind of a refresher after some time goes by. And as you have more experience and more things to draw on, I think we get even better at knowing what new questions to ask and what new things we can do as a church to keep children safe. So thank you for your time, and we thank you for your service.